What is up guys, my name is Helgi and today on Worst to Best we're gonna be tackling Mastodon. This Atlanta progressive metal band was formed in the year 2000 and has taken the world by storm with their furious mix of prog, sludge metal, country, stoner rock and blues. They've released 7 studio albums and today we're gonna rank them from worst to best. I love this band and I'm of the opinion that they've never made a bad album, but some are certainly better than others. And keep in mind that I'm not counting EPs, live albums, soundtracks and compilations, only full-length studio releases. Alright, let's dive down into the rabbit hole and pick our favorite Mastodon album, starting with the worst. Number 7, we have Once More Around the Sun from the year 2014. Now, this is not a bad album. I'm not even gonna try to tell you that this is a bad album. If this is your favorite Mastodon album, I'm not gonna try to change your opinion. I'm not gonna try to tell you that you're wrong. It's just my least favorite. In my opinion, it doesn't reach the same heights as the other albums in their discography. And it's probably the most sort of straightforward album of theirs. I'm trying to find words to describe my feelings towards this album, and like boring and predictable, I feel like they were too harsh words because this album is really neither. I mean, it is fun and it's got a lot of inventive songwriting and it's got some pretty standout tracks like The Motherlode and High Road and Asleep in the Deep and Emperor City. Those are all fantastic songs, but I just have some problem with the album. I'm not quite sure what it is. It kind of seems too long in some ways, even though it's only 54 minutes, which is, you know, in my opinion, the sort of upper limits of the perfect length for an album. It really isn't too long, but it kind of feels too long to me. There's nothing in particular that I really dislike about this album. There aren't any songs that I really hate in particular or anything like that. It just doesn't grab me quite as much as their other efforts. I mean, like I said, it's not a bad album, not at all. I find it, you know, quite enjoyable, but it's nothing quite special in my opinion. That's why it gets the lowest ranking. Alright, number 6, we get to the album Remission from 2002. This is their first album, and it's really an excellent debut, and I sort of hate putting this low on the list, but I gotta be honest, I don't think it's as great as the other albums that will follow, but I mean, it's got some great sort of spastic drumming and great riffs, great harsh vocals. It's a very harsh, very aggressive album. It doesn't have as much of the prog influence that would sort of come later on in their career, and you know, it's a bit more sort of raw and unpolished than the other albums, which is also part of the charm. It's sort of indicative of what would follow later with the 2004 Leviathan album, where they sort of took those ideas and sort of polished them up a little bit, made them a bit better, in my opinion. This album is a bit of a sort of diamond in the rough, and you know, there are some parts of the album that are certainly better than others, but I still think the album works as a whole, and I think it's best enjoyed as a whole, like all of their other albums. It does have some standout tracks like March of the Fire Ants and Ol' Nessie and Mother Puncher. I absolutely love those titles. Number 5, we get to The Hunter from 2011. I was kind of skeptical whether I should put this album or Remission in the 5th place, because they're so, you know, musically different that it's like a bit like comparing apples and oranges, but of course those albums are both very much Mastodon albums, so a comparison is due. But I ended up putting this album on top. I enjoy it slightly more I sort of went with my heart on this one. The Hunter is widely considered to be their worst album, which I don't agree with. I think it's quite fun. It's a very good album. It's more sort of melodic and poppy than their previous releases, which may be the source of the backlash, because people were expecting an aggressive, heavy sludge metal album, and they got The Hunter, which is a bit different. It's not quite the same. Of course, I might be a bit biased because I heard this album before Once More Around the Sun. I mean, of course, it came out earlier, but this was one of the first albums that I sort of dove into when I was getting into Mastodon. And I feel like Once More Around the Sun and The Hunter have a very sort of similar sound. They have similar ideas, but I feel like they sort of work better on this album. Standout tracks on this album are, for example, Blasteroid and Stargasm, Creature Lives, Spectre Light, Bedazzled Fingernails, The Sparrow. These are all great tracks, and it's a lot of tracks, but I really think they're all great. And I really enjoy this album a lot. I really do. But I think the rest of the albums on this list are better. That's simply why I'm putting it here and not higher. I don't really think if any other band made this album, then it will be considered a masterpiece. But because it came from Mastodon and they're this awesome, fantastic band with this amazing back catalog, I think that's sort of why it doesn't quite land high up there for most fans. Number 4, we get to Blood Mountain from 2006. And now we're getting into a really difficult territory. This was very hard for me because, in my opinion, this album and all the other albums that will follow on this list are masterpieces. I immensely enjoy this album. I think it's absolutely fantastic. It's in a way the last sort of very metal album that Mastodon made. I mean, of course, they're still very metal, but this one is much more metal oriented than what would follow. And in my opinion, it's sort of slightly less consistent in quality than the rest of the albums on this list. But I still retain that it's best listened to in its entirety. It's a fantastic ride. It is a very proggy album. Like, there's a lot of prog elements, but still, it's got this sort of metal core. The core of it is very metal, and you can definitely tell. Standout tracks on this album are Sleeping Giant, Blade Catcher, Hunters of the Sky, This Mortal Soil. This is all top shelf quality Mastodon stuff, in my opinion. But I simply put this album here because I think the other albums are slightly better. So let's get to our number 3 pick, which is Emperor of Sand from 2017. This is their newest full-length release, and I was so happy when it came out. It is such a good album. It's a great journey. The songs are absolutely huge and epic sounding, and the songs range from just good to absolutely brilliant. And I think, there was a bit of a backlash regarding the song Show Yourself, which is a pretty poppy song, and it's more sort of poppy and catchy than most other stuff. It's probably their least heavy song in a way, but I would say that Show Yourself is a good song. It's not brilliant, and it was a bit jarring at first when I heard it, but it's really grown on me, and I think it's a good song. But it's probably the weakest track on the album as a whole. Standout tracks on this album are Steam Breather, Roots Remain, Scorpion Breath, and Jaguar God. Those are all absolutely amazing tracks, and the rest of the album is just killer stuff. yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed this album and would really recommend listening through the entire album. Like every Mastodon album it's just a great journey. I love the concept and the story behind it, because when they made this album, the members of Mastodon, they were sort of going through a bit of a rough patch. It was a bit of a tough time. They had lost some family members, and the whole sort of theme, like an emperor in the desert, it sort of serves as a metaphor for the battle with cancer and that kind of stuff. It's they've all detailed this in interviews, so I don't feel I'll need to explain it that much, but it's just a really beautiful metaphor. It's really well done, and in my opinion, this album is sort of the musical counterpart to Crack the Sky. It sounds like the soundscape and the sort of journey aspect of it really feels very reminiscent of Crack the Sky, even though it's definitely its own thing. It's not like they're ripping off the music or anything like that. No, this is a very original album, and it's a very cohesive album. All of those influences and the concept and everything is just weaved together into this really tight, really wonderful bundle, and it sounds absolutely excellent. Now we get to our number 2 pick, which is Leviathan from 2004. Now I know some of you people are gonna absolutely hate me for putting Leviathan in second place and not the first place, because this album is widely regarded as their best album. And I completely understand that view. This is an absolute metal masterpiece. There's that word again. But keep in mind, I'm not saying this lightly at all. I really mean it when I say that this album is an absolute masterpiece. This album is just so much fun, and it's impossible not to headbang to. Just put on, Iron Tusk and try not to headbang to that. You will lose. Come on. This album really takes me back to that time when I had just graduated secondary school, and I was sort of cruising around the countryside in Iceland on this yellow Volkswagen Golf that I had. And it had a CD magazine in there, and I had a few CDs in there, but this album was probably the one that was played the most. And of course, this was in the countryside in Iceland. There were no cops around, and listening to Leviathan made my foot on the gas pedal feel really heavy for some reason. So let's just leave it at that. Alright, now by process of elimination, you probably know what my favorite album is. And my favorite album is Crack the Sky from 2009. For those of you who know me, you know I'm a prog guy. This is their prog masterpiece, so you might not be surprised that this is my number 1 pick. This is the album that made me fall in love with Mastodon. This is it. The whole time I was making this list, I knew this album would be number 1. It's an absolute roller coaster ride of emotions, and I love the concept behind this. It's such a weird and wacky concept, and it's just super prog, super psychedelic, and it's very weird and convoluted. And just listen to this excerpt from an interview with drummer Brom Daler regarding the concept. There is a paraplegic, and the only way that he can go anywhere is if he astral travels. He goes out of his body into outer space, and a bit like Icarus, he goes too close to the sun, burning off the golden umbilical cord that is attached to his solar plexus. So he is in outer space and he is lost. He gets sucked into a wormhole, he ends up in the spirit realm, and he talks to spirits, telling them that he is not really dead. So they send him to the Russian cult, they use him in a divination, and they find out his problem. They decide they are going to help him. They put his soul inside Rasputin's body. Rasputin goes to usurp the Tsar, and he is murdered. The two souls fly out of Rasputin's body through the crack in the sky, and Rasputin is the wise man that is trying to lead the child home to his body because his parents have discovered him by now and think that he is dead. Rasputin needs to get him back into his body before it's too late, but they end up running into the devil along the way, and the devil tries to steal their souls and bring them down. There are some obstacles along the way. How can you not love that? Seriously. I love the music on this thing, I love all the melodies, all the riffs, just everything. There's this really wonderful energy, this beautiful atmosphere that they conjure up here in this album. This is one of the closest things that I would call a perfect album. It's not only a masterpiece of metal, but also a masterpiece of prog. And it's so groovy, and it's so melodic, and energetic, and powerful, and creative. It's just amazing. And you know, I'm a prog guy, so I may be biased towards the more prog album, but come on. They did this so well. Everything about this album is so well done. Nothing feels underdeveloped, nothing feels out of place. It's one of the best sounding albums I've ever heard. The sound is so layered and dense, yet extremely dynamic. And it's not like Devin Townsend's production style, the wall of sound, you know, where it sort of feels like all the instruments are sort of attacking you from all directions and all frequencies, and it's just very tiring for the ears, in my opinion. No, this album really flows very well. It breathes. It sort of lets you gather everything before it moves on to the next thing. Standout tracks on this album are all of them. This album is a must listen in its entirety. Play it in your best headphones or speakers. Just sit the fuck down and listen to the music. But my favorite track is The Tsar. Their 11-minute epic. It's my favorite Mastodon track of all time. This is my favorite Mastodon album of all time. So, go figure. So that's it, guys. This was my worst to best with Mastodon. What do you think of the list? What is your personal list? I would love to hear it, so please put it down in the comments below. If you'd like to see more of these types of videos, then please put that down in the comments. I'm having a bit of identity crisis at the moment. I'm not really sure what to put up on this channel, so if you guys want to see more of these types of videos where I'm just talking about music instead of trying to make music, then that's okay. You can put that down in the comments and I'll listen to that. But anyway, thanks for watching this video, and I hope you give it a thumbs up and hopefully subscribe to this channel because I'm pretty new here. I don't have a lot of subscribers, and I want to get this shit monetized pretty soon. So yeah, see you guys later and take care.